Welcome to the Digitally Dreaming Off the Gridiron podcast. I'm your host, Asif Ali. I'm joined today by Super Bowl 40 champion and current Master of Neuro-Linguistic Programming, motivational speaker, keynote speaker. Is it Chukky or Chucky?
Chukky is what my mom calls me. So
Chukky.
go with that.
We'll go with that. Chukky Okobi. Chukky, how you doing today, brother?
Every day above ground is a good day.
100%.
Good day.
Yeah. How was your New Year's?
New Year's is always good, just pretty relaxed with the wife, but just getting prepared for this next chapter, this next trip around the sun. So, it was definitely good, time to reflect and to focus on where we're headed. So feeling good about that.
100%. It's always good to reflect, always good to kind of, take a step back and kind of outline what your goal is and go from there. So, so kind of like you, I mean, I didn't play in the league, but hey, I mean, I had a pretty good career playing arena and JUCO. So we'll start kind of from your early life and progress through. So from the beginning, was football your first love, or kind of how did you get into football?
Baseball was my first love.
Okay.
I never played high school. I never played football until high school.
Right.
But sports, the thing is, everybody gets into sports for different reasons. And, a lot of times when we're kids, parents are a big influence on that. And that could be a gift and a curse depending on the parent. So, but for me, I'm originally from Pittsburgh, PA, and grew up in a house where my parents were always fighting. And, it was a pretty tense atmosphere. And, when you're a kid, you feel like, I got something to say. I got something to value. I want to feel a part of the group. But when the adults are always focused on each other, a lot of times you can feel kind of left out. And so when I play sports, first of all, just to get away from the madness in the house, going outside and playing sports was an escape from being at home. And, not feeling valued as an individual at home, I found a place where I mattered. And that was, playing sports, playing baseball, playing outside, whether it was competitive or just, getting together with my brothers and my boys from the neighborhood. All of a sudden I went from not mattering or being an important member of my actual tribe at home to being seen as a leader and somebody of value, being able to hit a baseball or being, big and strong or being fast. And so what most people don't always recognize is that my attraction to sports was because I felt loved. And that's where at age 7, I decided that that's what I wanted to do. Not because of all the pomp and circumstance and the glitz and glamour on television, but because I felt good about myself. I liked myself when I was playing sports. And I had the idea that, if I could just feel like this forever, then life would be perfect. And that's what really drove me to push myself athletically. And I switched from baseball to football once I discovered football in high school. But, it was the same motivation.
100%. I think that, that motivation and kind of that intrinsic drive is what drives everyone. For me, I wasn't able to play football in high school. I played in JUCO. Mm-hmm. And, my first coach is now on the Baltimore Ravens, Coach Keith Williams. I told him, Dub, I haven't played, but it's like, it don't matter, out here, level playing field. You know what I mean? Everyone gets an opportunity, but, ultimately you got to figure out what's going to drive you to succeed and kind of make it to that next level. So kind of with that, kind of how was it when you transitioned to football? How was that for you in high school? I mean, were you always an offensive lineman, or kind of how did you kind of, talk to me about that a little bit?
I wasn't always an offensive lineman. When I got to my high school's Trinity Pauling School, it's a all boys prep school, about an hour and change north of New York City. And there's no physical education, there's no gym class. So to meet the state requirements, everyone's got to play a sport, whether it's competitive or recreational. And so I always played baseball. That was literally the only sport I played growing up before high school. And so you got to play something in the fall. I was like, well, I like football. I like the Steelers. So yeah, I'll play football. And didn't really, I mean, I knew the general concept. I didn't really know the rules or anything like that, but I knew I liked Christian Okoye. And, Kansas City Chiefs fullback. Why? Because he's Nigerian, the Nigerian nightmare. And I wanted to be just like him. So they said, well, what position do you play? I said, fullback. What number do you want? 35. Because I wanted to be just like Christian Okoye. And so when I first started playing football, I was a running back, and I didn't really understand all the ins and outs of playing offensive football. I really didn't understand defense, but it just came easy. It came easy to me. I remember the first time I ever got a handoff in practice, and like I didn't know anything about reading blocks or anything like that. I just took the ball and just went where I saw space to run. And so I ran, it went about 6-7 yards, and somebody tried to tackle me. Well, they went for a ride. And so I was just dragging them. Somebody else came on, I was dragging them. And then third person jumped on, I fell. And I got up, and I remember saying, this looks so much harder on television. And then the next play, I got the ball, ran over the little middle linebacker, went 60 yards. And I was standing in the end zone like, this is football? Like, I just remember thinking, like, this is the thing I've ever done. And so, but at that point, I was 13. And so, coming back the next year, a little bit bigger. So we moved down to tight end. They didn't throw me the ball, but, they were basically alluding to my future at that point. Like, go over there and put your hand down. Okay, you got to block this guy. And it's like, all right, but I get the ball on this play, right? Yeah, it just so happens I noticed the pattern of always being subbed out when they wanted to throw the ball. I wasn't really out there on tight end on third down. And so then one day, coach is like, go over there with them. And I was like, the offensive line? He said, yeah. And I said, what did I do? Because you know how it is. If you're a skilled player, it feels like a demotion.
Right.
But, that's where things really start to fall into place. And it's about recognizing where you can bring the most value to other people. And then that's in the sense of a football team. You're talking about your locker room. You're talking about your teammates. And that's where I could be the most valuable to the team. And the rest is history. That's where I played the rest of my career as offensive line.
100%. And, that's such an important point because, for me, I also find my identity in JUCO. I wasn't really particularly good at anything, but then, they started me at slot and then they started me at defense. But then really where I got my bread and butter was special teams, and essentially kind of, that's how I was able to kind of build my career, both in arena, kind of semi-pro in that area. But also what you said harkens back to one of the most recent NFL guests on the podcast, Chris Dishman. He was a receiver. He wanted to be a receiver when he went to, and we'll get to now your college career. When he is also a Boilermaker, right? So when he got to Purdue and his teammates with Rod Woodson, basically, he wanted to play wideout, but then coach said no. He's like Dishman, go to the defensive film room session, right? And then he's like, oh man, and it really got bummed out. He had to psychologically deal with that, right? And it was difficult, but it ended up being the best thing ever happened to him. Kind of to your point, where he added value to the team. It ended up kind of materialized to a 13-year career in the league. And similar to you, your 7-year career or 8-year career in the NFL, right? I mean, you found the coaches found, kind of what your sweet spot is, and essentially that ended up working in your favor. And I think that's kind of, if any student athletes are listening to that, just be open-minded to whatever your coaches want for you, because even if you don't get your first option, kind of whatever you think is working, whatever you like to do, most likely, more than not, your coaches may know you better than you know yourself, and then that's kind of, how you might be successful.
The coaches have a different perspective. They have what I call a press box perspective, where each person in their own life is metaphorically on the line of scrimmage of their life.
Right.
And what that means is I can only deal with what I'm presented with in this moment.
Right.
Like you can't see the big picture when you're down the line of scrimmage. All I can see is the line, the nose tackle. I can see the middle linebacker. I can see the safeties. I can't see everything though. Even though there's things that I can't necessarily see in this moment that do play into my success.
Right.
Now the coaches, they're doing film study. They've watched the tape from high school. They're watching the practice from every day. They're watching game films. They have a broader perspective of what's working with the unit, whether that be offense, defense, or special teams. They have a larger perspective. They can see everything from the press box. And so a lot of times when people were in Chris Dishman's situation and they're looking at their experience from the line of scrimmage, which is only their perspective.
Right.
We don't have that broader perspective of
Exactly.
what moving means to us as a team.
Right.
And that reminds me of a teammate of mine in college, Matt Light. Now, Light is a guy that, we came in together in 96 and we got drafted together in 2001. And Light was a tight end when we first got to school. I was the only offensive lineman in that recruiting class. And Light played tight end, even started a couple games as a true freshman. Then we changed coaches and he got hurt in spring ball. So he missed the entire spring. He was still kind of messed up when the season came. So he redshirted the second year. So after that, Coach Tiller called Light into his office and Light's like, did I do something? And he's like, no. He's like, but I think you're average at best at tight end. But I think you'd be an outstanding offensive lineman. And then Coach Tiller just went back to reading whatever book he was reading. And then Light's just standing there. And he's like, oh, but I played tight end in high school. And I even started last year against Michigan. All these things. And Coach Tiller's just letting him talk. And then at some point, Coach Tiller was like, you can play tight end if you want, but I don't have to play you. 3 Super Bowls and 11 years in the league later, I think Matt Light's okay with that switch now.
Absolutely.
But it's, goes to the point that we're talking about. They're like, listen, there's a bigger picture here than just you. And that's the thing that people, sports, non-sports, you got to understand that.
Right. 100%.
There's a much bigger picture going on than just your perspective. So.
And to your point about non-sports, like, in my now career in consulting, in my corporate life, right, pretty much, in technology, right, I came in, for example, my current company, with one role. And then basically my manager said, oh, like, I have a new opportunity. Have you ever done this role before? I said, no, that's not really my expertise, but hey, I'm open-minded, and now a year and a half later, right, I mean, I'm blossomed into it. And, essentially kind of to your point, the principles of football and being able to kind of play out your position to help the team reach a common objective is translatable across the board, and I think, to your point, your story, about also Matt, right, kind of, of him also kind of being tight end at Purdue, then, working with coach to kind of get to that point of realization that the O-line would be the best fit for him. Obviously the results speak for themselves, right? It's a kind of, I really think that whoever's listening, needs to understand that, this is principles these are principles you can take with you anywhere, and so, yeah. So let's talk about kind of, your college career. I mean, you had a really great college career. Matt Light was one of your teammates. Also, Drew Brees was your quarterback. So talk to me about kind of what your experience was like Purdue. I think you guys won the Big Ten championship in 2000, or at least you made the championship game. So talk to me about your college career a little bit.
I didn't have a bunch of schools I didn't have a bunch of options coming out of high school.
Right.
I went to Trinity Pauling, and it's a great school, and it's got a great reputation. But at that time, the reputation wasn't one for producing athletes.
Right.
We're talking about politicians, people who work on Wall Street, corporate world, who are doing incredible things. There's some alumni that are doing some really big things in the world.
Yeah.
But football wasn't one of them back then. So the only scholarship offer I had was Purdue. Not a bad one, but to me, I was ecstatic because my mindset was I can only play for one team at a time anyway. And I have an opportunity. I get to, Purdue at that time was a bottom feeder in the Big Ten. And, but my favorite player at the time happened to be a Purdue grad, which was Rod Woodson. Being from Pittsburgh, that was my guy.
Yeah.
And so to me, I was totally excited to be there. And that was Jim Coletto, was the coach that offered me a scholarship to play at Purdue. And I redshirted my first year. Then he left, he resigned, and I freaked out. I mean, it was the type of experience, if you can imagine it now, it's like my dad left. In my mind, I had this vision of playing professional sports, since I was a little kid. I knew that I was always going to feel good about myself and love myself if I could just do something that brought me the type of passion and acceptance that sports did. And all of a sudden, with Coach Coletto leaving, for my Star Wars fans, in my mind, it was like, that was Obi-Wan Kenobi. How am I going to become a Jedi?
Right.
And I mean, this is deep, man, because for 2 weeks every day, I found myself in the bathroom stall crying, like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then you just get to a point where you get tired of that. You get tired of like feeling negative. You get tired of feeling sad. You get tired of feeling scared. And I decided to myself, I said, you know what? I got to find an advantage here because I'm already here. I got the scholarship. I'm on the team. I'm enrolled in this school. Where are you going to go? Like, you're here. The opportunity for you is here. I just got to find a way to take the most advantage of this opportunity that I can. Everyone, so we're playing against Wisconsin, Ohio State, Michigan, all these different big schools, big time players and whatnot. And so my whole thing was this. Everybody's lifting weights, everybody's watching film, everybody's doing what they need to do to prepare to play football, as am I. That doesn't give me an advantage if I'm doing the same thing as everyone else. So I decided to go to this used bookstore on campus and look for something. I didn't know what I was looking for. I just knew I was looking for something. It was a used bookstore. And so my mentality, my actual strategy was go look in the trash. Go look in the trash at the stuff that nobody wanted. Nobody else is in here looking for what you're looking for. And you'll find something. I just didn't know what. And then I found it. And it was a book called The Secret to Creating Your Future by Dr. Tad James. And I said, that's what I want to know. So I grabbed the book, sat down on the floor, dirty ass floor in this bookstore, started reading the book, had no clue what this dude was talking about. I was like, so I took the book down, started to get up off the floor.
Right.
It was like the title started glowing at me. It was like The Secret to Creating My Future. It's like, that's what I got to know, the secret. So I sat back down. It's like, I'm just going to keep going deeper, reading this, getting deeper into it until it makes sense. And that's what I said, because I need to know this.
Right.
So I'm reading. And then it hit me like a lightning bolt. I said, I think I get it. What he was saying, Dr. Tad James, in this book, was that your entire world is in your mind. And in the book, he was talking about NLP. And I said, so he's saying your whole world's actually in your mind. It's not out there, it's in here. And with this NLP, I don't know what he was talking about back then. I was 18. So yeah. I don't know what he's talking about, but he says, if you learn this, you can learn to control what's going on in your mind. So my 18-year-old logic is my world's in my mind. With NLP, I can control what's in my mind. Well, then if I learn this, I can control my world, my entire world.
Right.
I mean, how else do you think a kid from Pittsburgh who just wants to play pro sports ends up playing pro sports for Pittsburgh?
100%. Yeah.
You want to change what's going on around you, you got to take control of what's going on within you. And that's how I, found success in sports. And so now, people who ask, you're coaching now, you're coaching people, coaching entrepreneurs, founders, NFL vets. Why don't you coach football? Why don't you coach what you were good at, and show other people how to do it? And I said, I am.
That is so critical. That is so critical what you just said, because that's what people say to me. Oh, you have all these accolades, like, throughout your playing career, like, why don't you go give back through coaching football? And I'm all like, I am, to your point, if I'm giving speech, if I'm motivating my team, if I'm having this podcast, having this platform to spread kind of what you're taught, your message of, being able to control your mind to achieve your objective, whatever that may be. To I kind of drive individuals, and like you said, like with your platform of CEOs, entrepreneurs, everyone, to kind of help them become better at performing in their work life, their daily lives, then you're essentially coaching football.
Yeah, I mean, to me, football is a human experience.
Right.
So you gotta in NLP is what you call chunk up. You gotta chunk up another level. So you got football players. Yeah. What are football players an example of? Human beings.
Right.
So it's like, it's all about how the human mind works. And, when I started implementing NLP back at Purdue, it was my advantage. So I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my teammates. I didn't tell my coaches. I never told my mom. I didn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
It was my advantage. But once I started to take control of what's going on inside, everything started changing outside. My performance changed. The opportunities changed. The way I've responded to opportunities changed. Whatever I was thinking back in that bathroom stall when Coach Coletto left, I retrained my mind. Like, that's not what's happening here. You got to tell a different story and live that story. instead of thinking about what you don't want. What do you want? And that needs to be where all your focus goes. And the biggest thing is not just controlling the mind. There's really there's four aspects to who we all are as human beings. And so I look at it like a totem pole, right? So thinking about 4 levels. The first level is your spiritual body. And energetically, it's literally like right here above your head. And so that's the part of ourselves that it's like a highest vibration of energy. It's the part of ourselves that can essentially do no wrong. It's like, so imagine your spiritual body or your higher self. Some people might call it that. It's like this ever trusting, ever loving parental spirit. Like it's the part of yourself that essentially energetically protects you. It's always got your back. It's always thinks in your best interest. So that's just the energetic, spiritual part of yourself. Then you go down, that's the top of the totem pole. So go down to another level, you got the mental body, which is essentially your conscious mind, or, the part of your mind that you call I or me. It's the analytical, logical part of you. It's your thinking. 1 + 1 = 2. That's happening in that mental body.
Okay.
So then you go down one more level and you got the emotional body. Now, this is what's running the show. This is the part of yourself that's running the show. It's your unconscious mind, or you might have heard it called subconscious mind. But this is where all of the energy comes from, because most people don't recognize or realize that emotions are just energy in motion, emotions. It's literally it's motivation. That's where it lives. And everybody is motivated, but they're motivated by one of 2 things. And this is something I learned from my offensive line coach at Purdue, Danny Hope, because I know it seems like I'm not talking about Purdue, but I am. This is what I learned from Coach Hope. He was talking about recruiting. He said, so, give me the players, even if they're not most talented. As a coach, I'll find a way to win. But when I'm recruiting, there's only 2 types of players. That's it. 2 types of people in this world. You got mules, you got thoroughbreds. Now give me a bunch of mules. I'll find a way to win. We'll get the job done. The thing is, I know with the mule, I'm going to have to use the stick. I'm going to have to use pain to motivate him. I'm going to have to beat him, and that's going to be more work for me as a coach. I don't want to have to do that. Give me a thoroughbred. Now, a lot of players think they're thoroughbreds, but the question you got to ask yourself, am I really? Because give me a thoroughbred, I don't need the stick. I don't need a carrot. All I got to do is give him the basic instructions of how to get exactly what he wants. Open the gate and watch him run. So when you talk about the emotional body, it's recognizing, what am I motivated by? Pain or pleasure? Am I motivated by getting away from what I don't want? Or am I motivated by the opportunity to go out and get what I do want? And the thing is, if we don't understand that part of ourselves, then we're reacting to the world instead of responding. And so what I mean by that is, we all know somebody who don't pay their bills until they get a late notice or a shut off notice. They got to feel pressure. They got to feel pain before they move.
Right. Yeah.
And so or other people are thinking about, they want to buy a house someday. They want to do things. So they want to have good credit. So they're quick to pay their bills, motivated by pleasure versus pain. And so that's a big thing that I recognize. And that's why when I was in that bathroom stall worried about Coach Coletto, like I was racked with fear. Negative emotions equal pain. Positive emotions equal pleasure. And so which one are you motivated by? And all those top 3, spiritual, mental, emotional, are how we create our physical world. So it's not just the physical body, that's part of it, but anything in your physical world, including cash, is a result. It doesn't come into being unless all 4 bodies, spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical, are aligned. They got to be aligned. And whichever body's above the next one has domain over it. So your spiritual body has direct influence over your thoughts. What you think, what you say to yourself in your mind has direct effect on how you feel. And how you feel that energy is going to determine what you manifest in your physical world. And so all of this I learned at Purdue, and especially to dealing with Coach Ho. Now, everybody always want to know about Breeze. What's not to want to know? I mean, the guy is a football legend that will never be forgotten. But to me, we were freshmen together. We got drafted together. And so the thing about Breeze is he's a thoroughbred all the way. And the thing that most people don't realize about him is he's the most competitive person I've ever met. Now, people say, you hear that all the time, but you don't understand. This guy, he wants to be the best at everything. Everything.
Yeah.
And so, like kids, you talk to kids and be like, oh, well, I want to be like Drew Brees. What should I do if I want to be like Drew Brees? And I always tell them the same thing. I tell them about an accolade. There's many records and awards and accolades that this guy has. I always talk about one accolade that nobody knows he has. And that is that Drew Brees is an academic All-American Hall of Famer for his academic performance in college.
Wow.
And so here's the thing. The way you do anything is the way you do everything. And so the thing is, he always pushed himself to see how good can I be at whatever it is I'm doing. And so with that thought process, football is just another thing he's good at because of his approach to life. And that's something that, when I think of Drew Brees, that's the person I know. If we're flipping a coin, it's no less important than the Super Bowl itself. He wants to win. If we say, hey, let's all meet down at Harry's chocolate shop at Purdue. So he's racing. He's going to be there first. That's the way you do anything is the way you do everything. So if you want to be good in sports, you can't not go to class.
Exactly.
You can't because if you're not doing all you can to be the best that you can that way, you'll never be like Drew. Never. Mm-hmm. Because that's the way it's got to be.
And obviously, I think, kind of the whole I guess the whole makeup of neuro-linguistic programming, it's fascinating just hearing you kind of talk about how it works, because I can actually say for myself, a lot of that does permeate with me in my daily approach to everything, right? I think that whatever I say does impact how I feel, and that in turn can also impact those around me, right? It's almost like a positive feedback mechanism, right? And so kind of with football, whether it's Drew or whoever, right? I mean, obviously, for your career, right? I mean, essentially, anyone you're interacting with, either in the locker room or the huddle or whatever, you're trying to draw in the film room, it helps you kind of build a better, stronger connection, I think, with those around you to help kind of, just build better relationships across the board. So
definitely understanding yourself and having a deeper understanding of the human experience, recognizing that everybody you're talking to is a human too.
Yeah.
You get to know yourself as a human being, you're actually getting to know people in general, and you can relate to people, respecting their model of the world. We're all from different places, different backgrounds, different races, different genders, different in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
We're all humans. And so when you chunk up high enough, again, it's an NLP term, we're all just humans. And once you start to get that, you can relate to anybody.
Absolutely.
Really. So
absolutely. Yeah. No, I think you're right. I mean, it's easy to become more relatable because you become more personable because you understand the human experience that much more, right? So absolutely. So kind of talk to me about kind of after you did get drafted, actually first, what was your draft experience like when you did get that call, the 5th round, going to Pittsburgh, because you grew up a Steelers fan as a kid. Talk to me about your experience.
Well, draft weekend was a bit of a roller coaster because, it's like being pregnant. This baby's coming out. You just don't know when.
Right.
So that's it. You don't know if, what hair color, eye colors, you don't know, but it's coming. So it's like from the moment the actual draft starts, it's like you're going into labor.
Right.
Everybody, we're all going to at that point because we don't know when our number is going to be called, or metaphorically when that baby's coming.
Right.
So, day one, you have an idea of when you're going to get drafted, projections and all that stuff. You're like, oh, we're probably going this round or that round. You have an idea of which teams are interested, but you don't know every team's level of interest. You just know who you've had contact with, who's reached out to different people connected to you. So like, Coach Hope's getting calls, Coach Tiller, the head coach, is getting calls. My mom, they're calling my high school coach, calling teachers from middle school, because they're investing a lot of money. So they want to know what they're getting. And this is for everybody.
Right.
That's potential draft pick. They go this deep to find out about you as a person. Yeah. We're going to you're an asset to this company, and we want to make sure we know what we're getting.
Right.
So I had ideas as to where, which teams I might go to, or, I knew I was going to probably go somewhere between, rounds 3 and 5, but I didn't know anything. And the thing is, I had no clue that I was, Pittsburgh was even a possibility. When you get into that process, I wasn't thinking about my loyalty as a fan. I was thinking about my life going forward. My affection for the Steelers and my support, that's something in the past. Now we're at a different stage. So I had no fixation on the Steelers. But draft weekend, Coach Coletto, which is the coach that brought me to Purdue, at this point in 2001, he was the offensive line coach for Baltimore Ravens. So the first call I got was from Baltimore. It was in the first round, but I'm saying to myself, I'm not going in the first round. Like, I knew I wasn't. I got a call. I don't recall the gentleman's name. So from Baltimore Ravens, and was saying, we're going to pick. He just flat out told me they were going to pick me in the 3rd round. So I'm at the spring game, for Purdue. But I'm on the sideline now, like big shot. So, and I'm totally relaxed because I already got the call. It's just not the 3rd round. The draft just started. So I actually finished that game, went to a movie because, it takes time. Because back then, you had the first 3 rounds on day 1. And got home at about pick, it was like 81 or 82 in the 3rd round. So turn on the draft. And I'm like, well, it's cool. They'll be calling me any second now because Baltimore said they're going to pick me. Clearly, I did not get a phone call. So, but here's the kicker though. They had picked, I think, 92 in that round because they won the Super Bowl the year before, and that was the last pick on day 1. So I had to go to bed on that. So I was in a bad mood. It was like, what's going on? And now wake up the next day in the bad mood, and every person that gets picked is like irritates me. Because I'm like, how they pick him, man? How they pick him? That guy sucks. Remember we played against him? They should have picked me. That's what happens when you don't have control.
Right.
Now, right. I'm stressed. So
yeah,
this is why I'm looking at things, right? And then I get a call it's right at the beginning of the 5th round. And it was Mike Miller. Mike Miller was our offensive assistant for the Steelers. So he calls Mike Miller from the Steelers. I thought it was a joke. I didn't believe him because I'm from Pittsburgh and I hear that Pittsburgh accent. I'm thinking this is somebody I know playing games.
Yeah.
So I'm like, but at the same time, in the back of my, it might really be them. So, but in my mind, I'm kind of like skeptical and irritated because I haven't been picked yet. And they say, has anybody called you, recently in this round? I lie my ass off. I say every damn team in every team in the league.
Right.
Jacksonville, Tennessee, Chargers, everybody's calling me right now. I mean, you guys better hurry up. And it's like, oh, okay. All right, well, all right, we'll call you back. Well, maybe. And then he hung up.
Right.
Whatever. Yeah. Sat down. Just kept watching the drive. About 2 minutes later, phone rings again. It's Pittsburgh, same number. Pick it up. And now Mike Miller's just got me back on the phone, and he's just dilly-dallying. Why? To block the phone line. So taking all the calls.
Yeah.
Asking me, and so after a while, I'm like, dude, you guys gonna pick me or what? He said, well, we're thinking about picking you. Yeah, we might pick you. Yeah, we just picked you. That's literally how it went.
Wow, yeah.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
I said, I'm on the Steelers. He's like, yeah. And I said, no way. He said, well, hold on a second. Coach wants to talk to you. And when I heard Coach Cowher on the phone, then it became real. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah. Like, damn.
Because to me, I wasn't thinking about the steal. I'm just thinking about getting to the league at this
Right.
point.
Right.
But it's like if you stay focused on what you want, pleasure motivated, thoroughbred, as opposed to what you don't want, a lot of times you end up getting more than you bargained for.
100%. I think that is exactly the whole spirit and purpose of football, but also just life as a whole to be successful, right? When you
Mhm.
focus on kind of, what you don't want, as opposed to kind of what you want, right? I mean, you'll be all right. I think when you go out and do more for others, things will come back to you in higher returns. So I do think that I agree with you on that. So I appreciate you sharing your draft experience. So now your rookie season, you're in Pittsburgh, right? Under Coach Cowher. You guys actually had a really good season. I think you guys made the AFC Championship game, lost to New England, who ended up winning their first Super Bowl. Talk to me about that experience, your rookie year.
Well, rookie year, I didn't play much. I
Yeah.
got some action the last week of the season, but it was really a developmental time because to me, the fact that I only dressed for one game, which
Yeah.
was against Cleveland, my last game that season, and so kind of presupposing each week that I wasn't going to get to play, I put a lot of extra time into film study, working out, and just developing myself, being ready for upcoming, to be ready at any point during the season, being ready for seasons in the future, and really learning from playing with some outstanding offensive and defensive linemen. I mean, shoot, I had to play against Casey Hampton every day. Every day. That was my every day I'm wrestling with this guy. And so to me, there was nobody better at that, nose position in the
Right.
league. So that put me in I felt like I was at an advantage because I
Absolutely.
would watch the games from the sideline and those, they can't block them. And I'm like, what is so hard? I do this every day. but they couldn't do it. And so
Yeah.
to me, I saw that I playing against Casey every day gave me an advantage.
Right.
So, then playing with guys like Alan Faneca and Jeff Hardings
Jeff
and
Hardings.
learning
Yep.
from them. And so to me, that first year was so much about observing and taking actions to be prepared when my number was called. And so, second year I started a bunch of games, and we won the AFC North. That was the first year there was an AFC North. The
Right.
season before we were AFC Central, and so we won the North that season. 15-1 in 2004 once Ben came on, and won the Super Bowl in 05. So it's an interesting story, but it's all just the human experience. It's a rare one, but it is very human.
It is, but I don't want to gloss over a season that the right after the 2002 season where Tommy Maddox was the comeback player of the year, and you started 5 games that year. So talk to me about kind of what that season was like, because you guys also made a playoff push, and obviously it's almost a different experience because your number was called the season immediately after your rookie year, after that developmental year to kind of step up and become the starting center.
Well, I mean, to me, I've been waiting for that since I was 7. So to me, it was like everything was on track. It was part of the script.
Right.
And for me, it's just it was validation. I proved to myself that I was right, especially thinking back in high school when literally nobody wanted me to play for them.
Right.
I had a different idea, had a different picture in my mind, and every step of the way, learning from the coaches in college, serendipitously ending up in that same huddle with Light and Breeze, and being creating the new standard for Purdue football, which is still in place. Like, I mean, there hasn't been another Big Ten championship team since us. And so when you finally getting playing time and actually contributing at the professional level, it makes everything you've been through. It's like everything happened the way it was supposed to happen. I'm supposed to be on this. I felt like I've been a Steeler my whole life. So, everything's going as planned. And, that can throw you off a little bit because at some point in time, there's going to be a change. And so, you get comfortable being a pro football player. You get comfortable, getting paid a certain amount of money, being viewed a certain way by the general public. And then all of a sudden, you got to come back to, you're flying high, but then at some point you're going to have to come back down to earth and recognize that, physically you can't do this forever. At some point in time, they're going to need to replace you, which means you're going to lose your job. And the thing is, we as human beings define ourselves by what we do professionally. If I fight fire, I'm a firefighter. If I teach kids, I'm a teacher. If I perform surgery, I'm a surgeon. So what happens to the man who's seen himself as a football player as far back as his conscious memory goes, since he was 6 years old, and all of a sudden he gets a phone call from his employer saying, "Hey, man, we don't need you anymore. Guess you're not who you thought you were." Click. It's traumatic, man. It's traumatic. And that's why the work I do with NFL vets now, it's important, because that's as traumatic as any life-altering experience and can cause the same mental and emotional effects as post-traumatic stress disorder. Right. Imagine if you woke up tomorrow and you were a woman. It's that extreme, because you understand that a lot of these people have been playing football as far back as their memory goes.
Right.
And that's how they identified themselves. But so since he was 6, now he's 26 and he doesn't know who he is. And that's the work I do now. It's like, listen, you hear about so many stories about people getting in trouble, getting arrested, bar fights, murder, domestic violence. It's that emotional body is messed up, man. It's messed up. Like all of a sudden, everything I believed about life and about myself is not true. How does a human being deal with that? And people can point at football players and say football players are like this, football players are like that. Like one thing I always used to find hilarious is when people say, "Oh, all football players, they cheat on their wives," and I'm like, a lot of teachers and doctors do too.
Exactly.
Don't try to single out football players are humans, and I know a lot of football players who would never do anything like that. I know a lot of football players who do that, but there's a lot of engineers out there that would never do that, and there's a lot of engineers out there who are, cheating on their spouse all the time. And it's just a human thing. And what's important for people to realize is that when we see the athletes on the court, you see the Steph Currys, you see the Sid Crosbys, you see the Drew Breeses and the Pat Mahomeses, is they're somebody's son, man. That's all they are. Everything else is details after the fact. And at the end of the day, football is a human experience. Playing professional football is a rare human experience, but human nonetheless. And so it's all the different aspects of who we are, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally, all come into play. And when the structure of life is fractured based on the fact that you no longer have the construct of football, there's no more locker room. It's playing the nature of the sport itself. It's the only sport that when you're done playing, you can never play again. Because where are you going to get 22 people to do that? And so, but remember, since 6 years old, this was a main focus of this human being's existence. And it's just gone like that. It can cause PTSD. And so that's a lot of what I work on now, is to show people how all the things we learned in football, we can apply in life now to get our results. We learned all these strategies to find success, and we found success. At Purdue, we found success. I found success at Trinity Poland, found success at Purdue, found success in the NFL. Now it's just a different game, but we can use our experiences, the things we've learned, things I've learned from Coach Tiller, things I learned from Coach Hope. Those lessons are still valuable, but the loss, the pain of the loss can sometimes take your focus on where you want to go next. You take it off, because I'm in so much pain, I can't even think straight. I can't even envision life, because the only picture of life I've ever had was surrounding this game. You know what I mean? And that's something that people don't talk about enough, is all we do is just point fingers and say, this guy's wrong, that guy's wrong, this guy, oh, he's a wife beater, oh, this guy's that. Do you understand what's going on inside? And how confused this person's son, I don't care if he's 30 years old, somebody's son and he's scared and he doesn't know what's going on, and it's such a drastic change that he can't even access what's wrong within himself. All I know is it doesn't feel right. I don't know what to do. I don't know what's happening. And it's just like if I woke up tomorrow and I was a woman, I'd probably feel the same way, you know?
And I think that's an important point because, I think the issue that so many people in the media that, they chastise, they glorify, right? If you succeed, you do this, you do that. Like you said, once the playing career is done, once that aspect of your life is done, this it's traumatic. And also kind of to your point about kind of, all the extra stuff that's published out there, we're so quick to judge character, but we don't understand, like you said, the inner workings of everyone, how everyone's human. And also, like, I'm thinking of kind of like, also like a lot of it has to do with, the fact that, there's so much fame and money and everything thrown, at some of the greatest players ever who've went on and not have, the best personal lives, or, who have went on and become broke. It's just T.O. or Andre Rison, because they basically wanted to live a lifestyle. Now, obviously they're out and, they weren't able to figure out kind of what their purpose is after, right? But I do think, kind of the work you're doing is definitely crucial. I think it's crucial because, like you said, I mean, people won't understand kind of unless they've actually played at that level, the highest level of sports, and that's been your life, your entire life. You're not really going to understand what that really means. You're not really going to understand how confused that individual might be, just trying to figure out who they are. Because, again, you're giving a 21-year-old, 22-year-old all these millions of dollars, all these cameras, everything. It's almost like you're making them invincible. So when they act like someone who's basically thinks they're invincible, then you're basically so quick to chastise them. And I mean, I agree with you, on that. So
Anybody who's judging another human being is not judging, they're judging themselves.
right.
And most people don't, this, like, it's just science. It's
Right.
science, because I'm an integrative psychology professional. It started in football. So I got into integrative psychology,
Yeah.
but this is science. And what I mean by that is math is a science. So part of it is nobody gave these kids money. They earned it.
Right.
And not only that, it's based on just straight economics in terms of what is being generated off of their energy,
Right.
off of their efforts. And so what you get paid is just a percentage of the whole. So you look at Patrick Mahomes. I live here in Kansas City. You look at Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes, his last deal was $500 million. What are the Chiefs getting out of it?
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So like,
Yeah.
It's like looking at them having all this money. People are comparing it to themselves.
Right.
But you didn't do what he did. So that's it. So you don't get that. He gets that because he helps somebody else get exponentially more than that.
Right.
So he gets his cut. And that's the way sports work. Most people don't realize that everyone, no matter what job you're working, from Tiger Woods to the fry cook at Burger King, same criteria. Number one, how much money do you generate for this company? Number two, how difficult would it be to replace you? And that's how everyone's salary is determined. And so when you look at somebody else who has more than you, you got to look at yourself and say, well, what value am I bringing to the world? And if you find a way to bring more value, you will get more compensation. The thing is, those large numbers, it's all about what story am I telling myself about this word million? What does that mean to me? Because some people can get $50,000 and stretch it to where it's $1 billion in 25 years. Other people can get $1 billion up front and it won't last them 3 years.
Right.
It's all about what meaning does the individual give to that money.
Exactly.
And that's what I'm talking about, controlling what's going on inside so you can control what's going on outside. That's what Dr. Tad James was talking me about in that book that night. Is listen, if you want your world out there to change, you got to control what's going on in here. You got to control the stories you're telling yourself, because that's going to affect how you feel emotionally, which is going to affect your physical body and the way you're able to actually use your energy, your emotions to do things physically to get what you want in return. But it's like I came up with a mantra back in college, and that is the mind commands, the body obeys. And so if I can't create it in here first, there's no way I can create it out here. And so that's what it really comes down to, is understanding that football, it's sports. Pro sports is the first reality show there ever was. And that, only thing that the media says is they're telling stories. Why? Because that's their job. And if they didn't tell you a story, you wouldn't be interested. So to me, and the thing is, think about your favorite movie. There has to be conflict in that movie for it to be worth anything.
Yeah.
So all the negative stories, I have nothing against media, because 99% of people wouldn't know anything if it weren't for the media. So
Exactly.
without the media, there's no pro sports.
Right.
Period. So to me, they have to tell stories that give a negative perspective. That's the equivalent to the conflict in your favorite movie. There's got to be fights. There's got to be tension. There's got to be emotions. Otherwise, the world doesn't care about basketball. They don't care about baseball without that story. And so those stories, the thing is, why people have these perceptions of football players is because they're not in the locker room. They don't have the experience. So they have to rely on whatever story they're given. They have to. And so I don't fault anybody for thinking negatively about football players. I don't, because they don't know what they don't know. And so they're going off the information they have, and they're making the most sense and the best sense of it that they can. And so, I don't know what goes on, in the boardroom at a Fortune 500 investment firm. I have no clue. I don't know. So all I can do is make an interpretation based on the little bit that I do know.
Right.
So that's the thing, is you got to give the media a pass. You got to give anyone who thinks negatively of athletes a pass. They're doing the best they can. They don't know what they don't know. And so you just got to forgive them and recognize that those former athletes who are getting into trouble, who are, struggling financially, they're doing the best they can too, considering that their world was just shattered.
Right.
They're doing the best they can, man.
Right, exactly.
So that's it, man. Is recognizing that football teaches us about life. It teaches about the human animal in the glory of it and in the tragedy of it, because everything in life is a dichotomy. So you have day, you have night, you got man, you got woman, you got hot, you got cold. You can't even make sense of white if you don't know what black is.
Right.
And so we always think that football, most people, they think it's something separate from themselves. It's all one thing, man.
100%. It's all building blocks, and like you said, there's so many parallels of it across different domains. And I agree with you on that. Kind of let's wrap up your career and just kind of talk about your best the season that you actually had tackled in the 2005 Super Bowl run season. So you contribute to that championship team. You're part of the immaculate redemption game, right? Like one of the greatest games of all time in the Colts in that divisional round. And kind of talk to me about what that season was in summary. Winning the Super Bowl and everything.
The biggest thing with every Super Bowl team, is if I go to Wikipedia and I look up, okay, who won Super Bowl 55? It's going to say Tampa Bay Bucks. Okay, but there's a story that's not listed there, and the story will only live on for those people that lived it. Like it's in here. I mean, you can buy to see the videos and you watch on NFL Network, but even still, you're getting a recollection of the story, not the actual story.
Right.
So here's the story that people forget from that year. It was glaring in 2006 when we were actually in the playoffs. Then everybody knew the story at that point, but how many other playoffs have we seen since then? So check it out. We were the favorites to win it when the season started. When we went to training camp, everybody believed Pittsburgh was going to be the champs. Why? We were the number one seed the year before in Ben's rookie year, when he won 15 straight games as a rookie. And mind you, that season, as incredible of a quarterback as Ben has proven to be, that year, his job was don't mess up. It's like, you just don't mess up, okay? Right. And not only did he not mess up, he won 15 straight games. Why? Because he had the number one defense in the league to help him. And plus, Jerome Bettis and all these other stars around him, Hines, Allen, Jeff. So he had the supporting cast. All he had to do was just manage the game. You don't have to be all the heroics. He didn't need to do any of that. Just don't turn it over and we'll win. And that's what he did. So going into the 05 season, if we lost New England in that championship game, but we were the number one seed. We got the rookie quarterback. We got the number one defense coming back. We got Jerome coming back. Everybody thought we were going to win. Here's what happens. We lose 3 straight games in the middle of the season. And if we lost one more, there's no playoffs. Mathematically, if you lose one more game, you cannot make the playoffs. So now all of a sudden we went from feeling really confident to doubting ourselves. Now, nobody's saying it. Everyone's saying the right things in the media. Everyone's saying the right things to each other. But, what you're saying is what you believe you're supposed to say, even though emotionally you might be having doubts. So after that third loss, Coach Coward came to the team meeting the next day. And this is exactly what he said. He said, fellas, you don't know what you don't know. And whether you realize it or not, it's what you don't know that's running the show right now. And think about this, guys. Since you don't know what you don't know, how do you know what you think you know is right? Don't answer me right now. Just contemplate this. You don't know what you don't know. You know what he's talking about? The emotional body. Think about it. You never woke up any morning and said, you know what? I'm making a conscious decision right now to doubt myself. Nobody does that.
Right.
It's called the unconscious mind for a reason. And whether you realize it or not, 90 to 95% of your behavior every day comes from that unconscious part. When's the last time you consciously thought about the steps it took to tie your shoe? You see what I mean? And so that's it. It's like that fear in that emotional body or that unconscious mind is the energy, emotion. That's the gas in your tank. And whether you say the right things, it doesn't matter. What do you really believe? You guys look around, look at this team. It's the same group that they said was going to win when this thing started. We're the same group. And so you look at the records, you look at these last games. If you believe that's who we are, then that's what's going to run the show. But so you say, okay, if you lose one more game, you don't make the playoffs. Life's a dichotomy. So what's the other side? If you win every game, you're the champs. Which story are you going to tell yourself? Are you going to keep, because that's what they're saying? That's what the media said. That's what the fans said. They're not in this room. They're not in this lock. They don't know what they don't know. And so all we got to do is win this next game. We do that, and then we'll worry about the next one. And the playoffs started right then and there, because we lose one more game, we're going home. And so we won the last 5 games, and they weren't blowouts. It wasn't like we just ran over. We had to fight, and we did it just to be the last team in. So with last team in, what does that mean? Every game's on the road. So we went to the number 3 seed, Cincinnati. We won. Then we had to go to see Peyton Manning and company, Edgerrin James, Marvin Harrison, all of them Hall of Famers. They're number 1 seed at home. Beat them too. Then we had to go to number 2 seed in Denver. Beat them. Now we're going to the Super Bowl to play the number 1 seed, Seattle. And we had to win all those games. And when you control what you don't know, you don't know. When you have control over what's going on inside, look at the result.
All facts.
Yep.
Man, what a powerful way to kind of cap off your greatest season in the NFL and your career as a whole and what you're doing right now with executives. I love how you're able to kind of, and I hope everyone who's listening appreciated kind of how Chukky was able to tie in all the lessons across the board and how it helped him achieve the highest objective in professional sports, and how it's carried him today to also coach and guide others on success. So I guess the last thing to close out, I mean, my Niners kind of surprised people, kind of like your Steelers did back when you won the Super Bowl. Who you got going to the Super Bowl who wins this weekend, and who wins the Super Bowl?
Well, to me, I gotta ride with Mahomes always. Like I
Okay.
can't. I just there's nobody else out there. Well, I'll say a couple guys have proven that they might be on his level. There's a couple guys out there, like the guy he played against last week. He can't be counted out either, but he's out this time.
Yeah.
But I'm always, to me, the Chiefs in the creativity of Eric Bieniemy and what he does with the offense, looking at what he's working with, like to me, I don't see them not being the favorite against anybody. That doesn't mean they'll win every time, but from my perspective, I think Kansas City is the best team, and I think that they'll probably end up winning the whole thing when it's all said and done. I don't think any of the NFC teams are as good as the Chiefs are. I think Cincinnati is a team that could challenge them. I mean, they already beat them once this year, but then so did Buffalo. Sometimes that actually works against you, because now I'm not just watching film of you against other people. I get to go back over what happened and make adjustments against the same opponent. And that's what we saw last week. And I think you'll see that again come Sunday. So.
All right, we'll see what happens Sunday. But yeah, Chukky, unfortunately, we're out of time, but I can't wait. Hopefully, we can do this again soon. So we talk more about neuro-linguistic programming and motivations, and keep inspiring and keep doing the great work you're doing. And what was the name of your is it basic
instructions?
Basic instructions.
.com. I also have NFLmentalhealthcoach.com, and both of those are basic instructions websites. So anybody who wants to know more about NLP, understanding more about the story of what I've been through in football, I'm a keynote speaker. I'm a speaker. So, I talk to boardrooms, I talk to classrooms. And so anybody who's interested in hearing more, going deeper into the story, basicinstructions.com.
Basicinstructions.com. Y'all heard it first. If you want to get in touch and motivate and help achieve whatever your goal is, definitely reach out to Chukky. Chukky, thank you for your time. Enjoyed talking to you today, hearing your experiences, and have a great week and a great weekend, and hope to talk to you again soon, brother.
I appreciate it.
All right, brother. Take care.
Later.